Hello, Frog fans. Welcome to Postgame Beers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Malloy at GillemK on Twitter, joined by my co-host, Jacob Sailors at JD Sailors. We are joined tonight by our producer, Crazy Ray Cartwright, and, of course, our Sultan of Stat, Martin Guerrero. It's officially opening day week, and to help us celebrate that, we have our now recurring guest, someone very familiar to listeners of the program, head coach Kirk Saarloos. Coach, thanks for making time today between, game planning for Florida Gulf Coast. We appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks for having me on. First off, I want to just say my heart goes out to Jamie and Jacqueline Dixon. I know Coach Dixon lost his dad, which, unfortunately, I know what it feels like. So just thinking about those guys, for their family and the whole basketball family, it's a tough deal. So just wanted to recognize that. Thanks for having me on, though.
Yeah, definitely thoughts with Coach Dixon and his family. We just had him on, actually. So, yeah, tough times, but hope everybody's doing well. But on that note, Coach, you will actually have to excuse MK. He actually just got home from the bar after last night.
Were you a Chiefs fan or a Niners fan?
I grew up in Kansas City.
Okay, so you're a Taylor Swift fan too?
Huge. Well, obviously it helps with the girls, right? That they watched a lot more football this year than previous years.
No doubt. That was an awesome game.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah,
phenomenal game.
Did you grow up a 49ers fan?
No. I grew up a Raider and Ram fan but then they would leave. They'd go to Oakland. They'd go to St. Louis. So I kind of was left without an NFL team. And then my wife is from Seattle, and we lived up there for 8 years. So I'm kind of like if I had to take a team, it would probably be the Seahawks.
Is that how you got Cole Fontenelle to Fort Worth last year?
Actually, yeah. The Northwest connection. His high school that he went to was probably 4 minutes from where Kristen and I lived up in Seattle. So, I know that whole area really well, and I think that was one of the main things with him was, selling him on Texas. Because I knew where he was from and how gray and rainy it is.
So I'm old enough to remember Chiefs games when Seattle was in the same conference, the same division.
Yeah.
So
Steve Largent.
Yeah, I hated Seattle just as much as I did the Raiders and the Broncos, which is wild to think about now.
No doubt.
Kirk, we had you on just after the College World Series last year.
Yeah.
And so that was our first time. But now, I mean, you got the grind coming up. You got 4 games a week starting this weekend. Are you ready for that? Are you amped up? Are you excited? What how you feeling?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if I'm ready. I don't have to play. So but I think the guys have been looking forward to Friday for a long time. And, sometimes you got to keep them focused and make sure they understand that it'll get here before you know it. So let's make sure we don't look into the future, and keep them present. And, but I know they're itching at it. They can't wait to play on Friday night. And, we have a 5-game week, actually, I think the second week of the year. So it's going to come pretty fast. But our guys are ready. They're excited and looking forward to it.
Are they at the point in practice where they're just looking forward to hitting somebody else in a different jersey?
Yeah. And our pitchers are ready to face somebody else too, because it's like the hitters know exactly what the pitchers can and can't do. They know their repertoire. They know exactly their release points. So our pitchers are probably more excited to face somebody else.
Yeah, we're all excited for sure. We can't wait.
Do you feel yourself getting more excited for opening day or something with bigger stakes like the Big 12 tournament, postseason, things like that?
Well, I always think opening day is always fun because it's the start of a new season, and you never know what it's going to be like. So opening day, we have one of my agent back in the day when I was still playing, Steve Springer. He has a mental quality at bat kind of deal that he works with young hitters on, and he actually talks about, can you have opening day every day? Because the mindset of opening day is I'm 0 for 0. This is going to be a great season. I'm going to be an All-American, or I'm going to have great stats or whatever it may be. And then day 2 comes and you're 0 for 4. And it's like, can you have the same mindset you had on opening day on day 2 or on day, game 34 or game 56? So we've talked about that a bunch as a group of, can you have opening day mentality every single day? It's hard to do, but that's kind of what we're looking forward to doing, is trying to have that energy of opening day and that clear mindset.
I need to have that mindset going into Lupton myself. I only drank 3 beers the last game. Got to up those numbers up. Got to go 0 for 0.
Yeah. How many today have you had?
Are you guys doing a 9 for 9 challenge this year?
People want it, but we're trying to be original and try to do something new and fresh. But I guess if the demand is there, we got to give the people what they want.
Yeah. I mean, well, what's the fresh idea? Do we have something?
Come up
see, that's a problem. It's fun to think we're going to have new ideas until it's time to create new ideas.
Sure.
Then it gets hard.
Well, I think you got to give what the people want.
I agree.
Actually, a lot of people are like, "Can I join you this year? Can I do it too?" And we're like, "Well, anybody can do it."
Who was successful last year doing it?
MK and I finished it.
Okay.
Not me. That's
Ray
sure.
Really, our 5th member had to be escorted out by his father after he fell asleep in the 7th inning.
Good times.
Yeah. All right. So we had pretty high expectations last year for the freshmen coming in, but I don't think it's out of the realm to say that they exceeded those, specifically Anthony Silva, Carson Bowen, obviously after, Curtis got hurt. How do you avoid a sophomore slump for those guys? And then I guess to tack onto that with Abelt and Klecker, how do you work on improving versus plateauing what has already been a very successful start to their TCU career?
Sure. I think it comes from just their mindset of they're not trying to duplicate what they did last year. They're just trying to be the best version of themselves this year, and sometimes it's easier said than done. But I think in terms of how much we work on the mental game and understanding that what you did last year does not dictate future success. And so you have to have the same mentality of coming in, working like a freshman, but having the leadership qualities of a junior. And I think those 4 kids in particular that were 4 All-Americans have that mindset of, what last year was awesome, but this year I have an even bigger role. And my job is to make sure that I show up every single day, with that clear mindset of last year was last year. It's all about this year, and not looking back and saying, well, by this time last year I had these stats or those stats. It's about getting this team to Omaha. And that's the real stat that matters.
Kirk, since you've been here at TCU, do you remember a particular team that has had this much potential depth as this year's squad?
I mean, there were some pretty doggone good teams.
Yeah.
Those 4 World Series teams. I think you look back, and I think the depth on those teams were pretty good as well. I think now, because there is a 40-man roster, you have 5 extra guys that can add more depth to your team. And so, with this year's team, there's a lot of talent, but there's still a lot of question marks.
Right.
And so, but in terms of our depth, I like our depth, but I think those teams in the, 14, 15, 16, 17 probably have something to say about, quality of depth too, when it comes down to, the 35-man roster.
So, and to follow up with that, when you're going through practice and you're trying to find roles for everybody, what is the process that goes into determining who's going to start, who's going to play where? Is it purely results in practice? Is it some sort of analytics, or maybe even Postgame Beers preview pods and take ideas from us?
Absolutely. We take ideas from everywhere. No, really what it comes down to is past success. Like a guy gets a benefit of the doubt, like Trey Richardson last year. Heading into the season, like he had a horrible fall. And then leading into the season, he was doing solid, but it wasn't like, man, this guy's, setting the world on fire. And then, but he has track record. That he's going to have success because he's done it in the past. And so you give him the benefit of the doubt. So when you're kind of evaluating stuff moving forward, our lineup changes almost every day. We talk about a lineup, we talk about who's playing as a coaching staff, and it literally changes daily. Some guys obviously don't change in the lineup, but there's some guys that come in, come out, and a lot of it is based on, okay, who are we facing? What's the weather conditions? Is this going to be a day where the wind blows in, or is it going to be a day where the wind blows out? We got to be more offensive. The defensive side of things. What's the pitcher? Who's going for us? Is he a strikeout guy, or is he a guy that's like Stoutenborough that's going to get a lot of ground balls? And we got to think about having infield defense first over hit. So there's a lot of factors that go into it in terms of putting a lineup together. It's not just who are the 9 best batting averages. It's a lot of times who we're facing, what they like to do, and then from our standpoint, who do we have going on the mound, and what do we want to have done defensively? And sometimes it takes a while. Like Cole Fontenelle, I don't think was our starting first baseman until probably maybe a month into the season, 5 weeks into the season. Mm-hmm. And so it takes time to take shape. But we definitely look at it from all angles for sure.
Interesting.
Starts with the defensive side, and then you build the offensive lineup based on that, all the factors that you mentioned?
Sometimes it's defense first. Sometimes it's, hey, we're going to go offense first, and we're going to, you might play somebody that maybe isn't your best defender, but you need to get a little bit more offensive. The big thing is the guys that you have in place that are going to be in the lineup, you build around that. So a lot of times, you're hoping for a Curtis Byrne and a Peyton Tolley and Silva and Bowen all take care of what they're supposed to do, and then you can maybe go a little bit more defensive. But the ebbs and flows of a season kind of dictate your hand sometimes in terms of which direction you go with lineups.
Interesting.
Along those same lines of keeping those guys in the lineup, I've noticed you played a lot of Carson Bowen and Curtis Byrne at first base. Is that something that you're going to be able to do throughout the season, is rotate those guys through there, give their kind of legs a day off from behind the plate, especially?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we want to keep both of those guys in the lineup at all times. And we also have Peyton Tolley, who is going to occupy the DH spot. So to keep both Carson and Curtis in the game, we got to put them at a position. And so, first base is one where, we can put them over there. They've worked tirelessly in terms of the defensive side of things, to be a good first baseman. And the great thing about a catcher is you always feel like at first base, they're going to knock the ball down, right? Because they're used to, knocking stuff down with their chest, on dirt balls and behind the plate. So you always feel like the toughness factor of, knock it down, pick it up, and run over to first base is always going to be there. But they've done a really good job in terms of working with Coach Bruce and putting the time and effort in over there so that we can, like you said, we can give guy a break behind the plate, but still keep him in our lineup.
So with the schedule the way it is early on with, some of these weeks we play 5 games, do you could we expect to see a lot of fluidity in the lineup, like giving all these extra outfielders a chance at the plate, just a lot of early rotation and maybe not just a set lineup?
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to see a set lineup for a really long time.
Okay.
I think there's going to be opportunities for guys to be able to, in the outfield, we want to get Sam Myers in there. We want to, Jack Arthur has had a good last 2 weeks, in terms of, at the plate and actually in the outfield as well. So it's like, okay, how do we get him a start here and there? How do we get a couple other guys feet wet and just give them opportunities? Because a lot of times you don't know what you have until you play it.
Right.
And especially the new players. So, did we think that we thought Silva was going to be an All-American, but you don't know until you put him out there. Same thing with Bowen and those other guys. So you have to give them opportunities, and also opportunities where it's not just a one day where they have the pressure of, okay, I want to get 2 or 3 hits so I get in the lineup the next day. You want to make sure that you do a good job of giving guys opportunities and giving guys, opportunities for success, being able to put them in a situation where they're have a chance to have success, as opposed to, you have Sam Myers come in for his first start and he's facing a nasty left-hander.
Right.
Yeah, probably not very nice to do that to a young kid. So you got to pick and choose your spots of, when you give those guys opportunities.
Okay.
What does a normal week look like for you? Obviously, without giving away state secrets here, but Monday, I don't know if you're game planning for Tuesday. What does that week look like from a obviously you have practice, right?
Yeah.
How do you devote your time to whether it's, analyzing stats, planning out for the next opponent? What are you working on?
Up here, upstairs with the coaching staff, or downstairs with the team?
Coaching staff.
Yeah. So normally Mondays are our off day. We actually gave them yesterday off and today off in terms of the players. But Monday's usually an off day. It's usually an off day in regards to we have no baseball practice. The coaching staff will come in and kind of reassess and go over, what we learned and what we liked and what we have to get better on, from watching film from the weekend. And it's basically just tying up loose ends from the previous week. And then it gives you an opportunity to plan for this week. So we're in here looking at Tuesday's opponent, and then going ahead and also starting to work on Friday's, the weekend's opponent. And then on Tuesdays, we all come in, we all meet as a staff, not just our coaching staff, but our support staff. Danny Weed, our trainer, Coach Dakin, our strength coach, our academic advisor, anybody and everybody that has any role at TCU in terms of the baseball program, we'll all meet at 10 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, every single Tuesday, just to go over everybody's job. They'll take over and they'll talk about their position in terms of, Weedy's going to talk about what's going on down in the training room, who's banged up, who's not feeling well. Coach Dakin's going to talk about the weight room. Dallas is going to talk about academics, where the guy's at academically. So we spend about an hour up here in my office just kind of breaking down pretty much everybody on our roster so that we all know where everybody stands physically, academically, on the baseball field, nutritionally, everything, just so we feel like we have a great pulse of where guys are at. And then obviously we have the game on Tuesday night, and then practice Wednesday, Thursday. And then the weekend is, for obviously Friday, Saturday, Sunday. A lot of times I wonder if people think that we show up for a 6:30 game at 3:30, which I think some people probably do, but we're usually in here at, 9, 10 a.m. for a 6:30 game, and then back home at, 11 o'clock at night. So they're long days, but that's the fun part of a season.
How much time are you spending on the next opponent, specifically for a weekend series? Tuesdays are kind of all over the place, I would imagine, but a conference opponent's coming up, Oklahoma, Texas Tech. How much actual time would you spend scouting a team like that?
I would say if we have, say we have 7 guys up here in the office, we're probably spending, I don't know, probably 50 man hours for a weekend series. Coach Bruce is watching every single one of their pitchers on their whole staff, in terms of not only the analytical side of it, but then watching it with his own eyes. Right. Because a lot of times people go analytics only and they forget the old school approach of, hey, I see what I see and I understand what he's going to try to do by what I see on film, as opposed to seeing just by numbers. So we spend a lot of time looking at numbers and looking at, defensive positioning and what guys like to hit and don't like to hit, or what guys throw in certain counts. But at the same time, we spend a lot of time actually watching the game. And so it's kind of, it's fun. It's fun to prepare, for an opponent, because you feel like you can kind of get an advantage by the more preparation you put in, the better chance you have at letting the team understand what we're trying to do, and the better chance you have to win. So I would say for the most part, everybody's saying ripping down 7 hours per opponent, per guy. So you're looking at probably, like I said, 49, 50 hours.
How hard is it to prepare for a non-conference opponent, especially like a Florida Gulf Coast? They had a really good year last year, but they also lost a lot of production from that team.
Yeah, they lost. I was looking at them a couple of weeks ago, and there's basically 1 or 2 guys that got meaningful at bats for them from last year's club that hit a lot of homers. They had 142 home runs last year.
Yeah, I think when we had Ben Upton on, he was saying something like they have to replace 97 of 114 home runs they hit last year.
Yeah, it's a ton of production that they lost, but all the guys that they have returning are on the mound. Yeah. So they have a ton of guys returning on the mound, and then when you watch video, you got to go watch all the transfer portal guys that like Farrow is a right-handed guy that's got some juice that played at Miami last year. So it's like you got to go, dig up kind of some stuff of certain guys that are on their roster now. But it's difficult, especially early on. You saw it with football, right? When TCU played Colorado, there was no game film of what Colorado was like. So it's kind of going into it blind, and then by the time season rolls around, the regular season kind of gets going a little bit. Now there's film. Now you have an understanding of the philosophy and what they're trying to play, and it's a lot easier to scout. So, but yeah, until then, you're kind of going into it a little bit blind with high school kids that you have no idea about.
So going back to the coaches, can you describe the impact Coach Lon has had?
Yeah, he's been huge for me. He's been huge for our program. 38 years of experience coaching. He's coached first rounders. He's coached, he's been to the College World Series. He's kind of done it all and seen it all. So being able to, him and Coach Howard, being able to kind of let them do their thing on the pitching side, and then, just kind of pop in every once in a while is phenomenal for me in terms of being able to still coach, still be involved with the pitching side, but kind of turning it over to them and let them let all of our pitchers know that they have somebody to go to at all times. That's been big for me, and not a guy that's kind of bouncing around as the head coach, but you have somebody to go to all the time. And Coach Lon has been phenomenal in terms of the discipline of our pitchers and just his knowledge of baseball and pitching. So it's been really, really great for me to have someone like Coach Lon, and then also Brian Howard.
Hearing you say Coach Howard makes me feel old.
And it probably makes Brian feel old too.
Yeah.
He's like, now it's full circle, and now he's Coach Howard.
How are those guys doing, Coach Scow, Coach Howard?
Yeah, Brian's doing phenomenal. He's like I said, he's a sponge right now. His ears are wide open, and but he brings a lot of value in terms of when he speaks, our guys listen, because they know exactly kind of what a legend he was when he played here, big game Howie. And so, the personality is off the chart. So it's perfect for our pitchers to be able to go to Howie. And then Scoug is exactly what Coach Scoug you thought as a baseball player is what he's like as a coach. He's kind of a no-nonsense, straight-to-the-point kind of guy. He's coaching first base and helping out the base runners over there and the catchers. And it's just there's a no-nonsense, gritty work ethic with Coach Scoug. And so, you have two guys that kind of lived and breathed what our guys are going through right now. And so we turn it over to them sometimes just to talk about their experiences here. I never played baseball at TCU, but these are two legends that did. And so they kind of, impart their wisdom on what it's like to be a baseball player at TCU, and when they talk, our guys listen for sure.
So talking about the pitching for a minute, are you taking the same approach as you are with the position players as far as kind of valuing past production as kind of the primary variable, or is it a little bit different when trying to fill those pitching roles?
Well, yeah, it's a little bit different. You have to kind of see what your eyes see a little bit more, maybe on the pitching side of things as the season gets closer. The rotation's kind of set now. We're gonna end up going Tolley, Klecker, and Morris on the weekend.
In that order?
Yeah, it's gonna go left, right, left. Kind of split up the lefties. But I think being able to have, your Saturday guy they're all important, but your Saturday guy, can be even more important just because you have a chance to win a series, or you have a chance to, get a win back if you lost Friday night. And then if you use people on Friday out of the bullpen, you'd like to have them available on Sunday. So you need a guy in the middle that can really go long, and give you some, some deep into ball games. And Kleck has done that, obviously. And I think whatever the rotation starts at the beginning of the year, wait till the end of the year and tell me if it's the same rotation. It never is. You know what I mean? It starts like Sam Stoutenborough started Sunday the first weekend. And then like his shoulder bugged him a little bit. He didn't pitch for 3 weeks, and then was the middle reliever, and then was our number 2 starter the rest of the year.
I think I forgot that he started the first weekend.
Yeah, he started the first weekend against Missouri, and then didn't pitch for 3 weeks, and then was a middle reliever, and then was a starter, and then became one of the main reasons we got to Omaha was because of Sam Stoutenborough, who now obviously, well, you probably don't know this, but Sam has now been hired by the Flying T Club, which I think is a phenomenal hire.
Oh, that's awesome.
By John Denton and the boys at the Flying T, and so, but again, the first weekend rotation, it'll change. It'll probably change by the second week.
I like what you said about Saturday kind of being the glue guy of the rotation. If you think of, past TCU teams, especially in your tenure, you've always had a really good Saturday guy. 2 years ago was Marcelo Perez filling that role.
Sure.
And then last year, for the most part, it was Cole Klecker until, out of necessity, you needed him on Friday. But then you had Luis Rodriguez, who was able to fill that for a while.
Yeah. I think the big thing is I like the depth of this group. But, injuries can change that in a hurry. So we have to keep our guys healthy, and then give them opportunities. Give them opportunities like we talked about with the position players to go out and have success. And we'd like to be able to have a little bit more defined roles down in the bullpen this year, as opposed to last year's group. It was a little bit more undefined, so with this year's group, we'd like to have, a little bit more defined, a 6th inning guy, a 7th inning guy, an 8th inning guy, and a 9th inning guy. That in a perfect world, that's what we're looking for.
With that said, who are you leaning towards with the 9th inning guy this year? Because last year, Garrett Wright, you're replacing that.
If this guy isn't in, if it's not Tolley, Klecker, or Morris, I'm going to give you one guess, Mr. Cartwright, who's coming out of the gate in the 9th inning.
Benjamin.
That's right, JD. Benjamin Abelt.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about him in my perfect world, which means absolutely nothing.
You wanted him to start.
I wanted him to start. Yeah. So what's been the
does.
process? What's been the process with Ben and finding his perfect role? I know you're trying to stretch him out, but ultimately not going that way, at least as of now.
Well, to be honest with you, it's not that he lost a rotation spot. To be honest with you, it's just a matter for this team to start the season. To be able to have a guy that can pitch multiple times on a weekend, and the team knows, and the other team knows that the game's over when you have a lead and you get to that point, is a pretty good feeling. I think, but again, Ben Abel didn't have a great start to the season. Then he was kind of a middle reliever. Then he was kind of a, and then he started the game at West Virginia, if you remember that, in that debacle in Morgantown. And then,
tough weekend.
Yeah, tough weekend. That was the low of the low.
Martin was there.
Oh, good. You're not allowed to come anymore. No, but then for him to go on the role that he went on at the end of the season, so he could be a starting pitcher this year, and you'll get your wish, JD. But to start the season, he'll be the guy that comes out of the gate, either in the 8th or 9th inning when we're winning ball games, and he's really good in that role. And for this team on day one, that's what we see him as.
Can we guess Ben Hampton on Tuesday?
That's a pretty good possibility.
Okay.
I was just going to ask about, because you mentioned Zach Morris. Obviously, he's had a huge impact already. We're naming him as a starter. So Ben, that's been a good transition for him from West Virginia to Fort Worth.
Yeah, he actually just yesterday was baptized at Christ Chapel, which was a huge deal. I think we had about 30 of our guys sitting in the front row watching him get baptized and hanging out, and so that was super cool. His transition's been awesome. It's a lot of fun when you have guys that come from different programs and kind of fit right in right away. And that's what we've really had over the last couple of years with our transfer guys. I mean, we haven't had one guy where it's like, man, what were we thinking on this guy? They've been all phenomenal in terms of kind of just, it's almost like they've been here for a couple of years.
Does that speak to the culture that you've been able to instill?
I think it comes down to our kids, our players, in terms of who they are. welcoming somebody that, maybe is there to take your job. Let's call a spade a spade. These guys, the transfer portal guys, aren't coming in to add depth.
Mm-hmm.
You want transfer portal guys to come in and have some be a difference maker. And I think the amount of guys that we have and what our guys and the selflessness that they have and just what the ultimate goal is, and that's to win. And if these guys can help them win, they surround these guys right from day one when they get in. And I think the culture piece is a big part, but I think ultimately it comes down to just what awesome young men we have down there.
A couple other transfers coming in this year. Peyton Chetnier from Ole Miss, Jack Basir from Pepperdine. We expect to see a lot of those guys on the field. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Again, you don't want to bring a transfer portal guy in and have him not play. You want him. Obviously, you're never going to be 100% strike rate in terms of who you bring in. But Peyton, we felt like Peyton fills exactly the same role that we felt like Trey Richardson could fill. Kind of a veteran player that's won a national championship at Ole Miss, knows what it takes, knows what it looks like, and then is a great teammate, great leader. So there's some intangibles there too. It's not just on-field production. There's a lot of off-field production that most people don't realize and see with a lot of these guys we bring in. And we do a lot of research on the type of guy we bring in, and if they're going to bring not just baseball production but also off the field production.
So speaking of second base with Peyton, Martin doesn't talk a lot, but he will not stop talking about Ryder Robinson, this freshman phenom, to the point of is that job up for grabs throughout the middle of the season?
Second base,
yeah.
Well, let's be honest, every position's up for grabs. Right? Every single one.
Continuous improvement.
Yeah, always. Are we going to find opportunities for Ryder and Jack Basir and Brody Green? And, there's a lot of guys that it's basically, okay, if you want it, go get it. And so whoever plays the best plays the most. We don't have any agendas up here when writing a lineup. It's the guys down there write the lineup. We don't write it. And they write it just by how they practice, how they play, everything that goes involved with it. So, but Ryder's a good ball player. We've had some good luck with guys in Utah, and Ryder's, he's got some tools and he's got some talent for sure.
What's the health of the club like heading into the season?
There's
without jinxing anything, of course.
Yeah, well, I knock on wood all the time. Like, Peyton Chetnier is, he's like a horse racer. He's like a horse that knows how to get to the starting line. He knows the season started Friday, and makes sure that he gets his body right to get there on Friday. And so he's been banged up a little bit. We lost one of our pitchers. Lost one of our arms, a transfer from Baylor. Blake Rogers has a season-ending injury. That happened this last weekend, which is a big time bummer. But there's some other guys that are kind of nicked up, and for a coach, I think the worst weekend is the weekend before opening weekend. You got to get arms built up, you got to play the games, you got to scrimmage, but at the same time, you're like, I didn't call a lot of fastballs in, when calling pitches, because I don't want to hit our guy and hurt somebody, and you're always kind of hoping that your pitchers get through the weekend feeling great so that we can get to the season. But it's an ongoing deal. It's tough. It seems like injuries are popping up a lot more and a lot more often all over the country. And I think it's just it's one thing that's hard to control. But we try to do our best to make sure that we keep our guys on the field.
Have you, going back to the fall, have you seen out of a TCU team hit as well as they did this past fall? I mean, it seemed like everything, and it wasn't like home runs or any necessarily, but it seemed everything was line drived hard.
Yeah, I mean, and as the guy calling the pitches, it pains me to say, it's been a difficult lineup to navigate, and there again the depth the depth part of it, I think, comes into it, where it's like every guy that kind of runs in there, pretty dang good, and you have to execute pitches to get them out. And so that's, Coach Bruce is never satisfied, ever. Like I'll say the same thing that you just said, Ray, in terms of, man, I feel like this team does a pretty good job, especially not giving up at bats. Like they get to 2 strikes and it takes another 3, 4, 5 pitches for the pitcher to get them out. It's like they're tough outs even when they don't get on base, and he's never satisfied. He doesn't think as much about that as I do at calling the pitches, but I'm like, man, this is a tough lineup to face. And I can't wait when we have all 9 going in the same direction, in the same dugout. But I think it's got a chance to be a good hitting team for sure. And not as much speed. We have some guys that can steal some bases, definitely. But when you lose Elijah, Trey, Braden, and Austin Davis, I mean, those are 4 guys that, all stole probably 15 bags or more last year.
Cole Fontenelle got his too.
Oh, and Cole Fontenelle, sorry. So yeah, I think he stole 141 last year or 142, which is mind-boggling. So this year's club, we'll still get ours, but I don't know if we'll challenge 141.
So Martin brought up this point last week we were talking about the offensive success on the base pass, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Trey Richardson was the example. So he was at Baylor for 2 years, sold 15 bags. Last year, he had 25 in 1 year. And obviously, you just talked about the speed, but can you talk about what you guys do to make them better base runners, even for the guys like Carson Bowen, who had 9 of his own? And I wouldn't, you look at Carson, you don't really see that, but he's obviously had some success there. So,
well, I think part of it is the style in which we base run, but the other thing is we work on it. We work on it. The first thing we do after stretch, the position players, we work on base running for 20 minutes every day. Whether that be, and that's everything at first, at second, ball and dirt reads, stolen base, like working on stolen base technique. There's a lot that goes into base running, and we spend a lot of time doing it. And I think the great thing is, Coach Bruce's IQ in terms of like feel for the game and understanding, like, okay, this guy's throwing a breaking ball right here, we're stealing. Like, and and the guy throws a breaking ball, and a breaking ball is a tough pitch to throw on, especially if it doesn't quite get to the catcher. Next thing you know, it's a stolen base. And a lot of it's because it's pitch selection by Coach Bruce of when to do things. So I think that's part of it. Curtis Byrne, you can mark it down right now. He will get at least 3, if not 5 stolen bases this year. I'm telling you, I've never seen the guy run faster. He's legging out infield hits, boys.
He unhitched the wagon.
He's dropping bombs and getting infield hits.
And no more getting thrown out at the plate, right?
There's no that might happen, but it's not because of lack of speed. The guy's flying around the bases right now.
He's in the best shape of his life.
100%. He definitely. I'm telling you, he looks awesome. He's moving great. I've never seen the guy happier, man. He's the guy that you show up every single day, and the guy's got a huge smile on his face and is fired up to be there. Like there's probably no one bigger in terms of getting somebody back like him and Boyers. Those 2 guys of how much value they bring just by personality, and just love of life, man. They show up every single day fired up to be there. It's like they don't have a bad day ever.
Can you talk about Boyers a little bit more? Because, you read the comments online and he can kind of be divisive because they just look at his numbers. What else does he bring to your team intangible wise?
Yeah, you know what? He'll go through a little run every once in a while where he'll swing and miss and strike out. But he brings a lot to the table in terms of outfield defense, being able to steal bases, being a switch hitter, a lot of intangible things that, he's a winner. He's always won. And, people can say whatever they say, but they don't know what it's like inside the walls over here in terms of what he is and who he is for this program.
One of your other outfielders, Chase Brunson, a relatively unknown, freshman coming into fall and then really stood out. What was the process like getting him on the campus, and has he just exceeded every expectation so far?
Yeah, so I got a call from a buddy that it's a small circle. So I got a call from a buddy that I knew probably when I was back in college, and then started running his own summer ball programs and stuff like that. And he never really calls me unless he's got a guy. And when he called me, and I think it was probably right around July the 15th or 16th. So you're talking the middle of summer. The portal just closed. The portal recruiting was kind of coming to a close for at least a little bit. And he called me. He says, "I got a guy for you." I said, "Okay." He's an outfielder. I said, "Well, we need an outfielder." And he said he's a Loyola Marymount commit, but their coaching staff just left, so he's going to get his release from there, and he's looking to go somewhere else. I said, "Okay." And we did a Zoom call, and then about a week later, he was on campus with his mom and dad and myself, and I think he actually committed the day before coming on campus. He just wanted to come check it out after he committed. So that was at the end of July. And then, since that point, all he's done is come on campus, and he's done a really good job. I'm excited for our fans and for you guys to be able to watch him every single day. And he's a very talented kid that works his tail off. So he's going to start in center field day one, and he's hopefully kind of like Braden, even though Braden didn't start game one of his career, right? Braden, I think, started game two. He didn't play game one
against Mississippi State.
So hopefully, Jay stays out in center field and patrols out there for the next 3 years.
What's that like for you as a coach, having that kind of size and speed out of a center fielder?
Yeah, that's, usually, like you said, you go from Elijah, who was, a strong kid, but, shorter in stature and can really run, and now Chase he's not as fast and quick as Eli, but he can, when he's underway, he can run a little bit. He reminds me a little bit of Dane Steinhagen in terms of kind of long leg and kind of a graceful. He's not quite as graceful of a runner as Dane was, but once they're underway, they can really move.
We are.
How was the scrimmage at Globe Life?
It's always fun to get in there, especially with it raining all day on Saturday. For us to be able to get in there is always nice. We try to do it at least one time prior to the season because we're going to play in there the third weekend of the year, and then at the end of the year the Big 12 championships there. So a lot of times we try to get in there just so the newer players that haven't been in there kind of understand when they walk in, okay, where's the bathroom? Where's, all the different kind of, when we come into the stadium, we'll come in here, and they kind of been there, done that, and it feels a little bit more like home as opposed to just, another ballpark.
One of your guys that had a really strong fall was Brody Green.
Mm-hmm.
Has he been able to carry that over into, basically it's just kind of like spring training right now, right before the start of the season?
Yeah, I mean, for Brody, he had a phenomenal fall, and in the spring, it's not been quite as phenomenal, but hitting's hard. And so he'll get his opportunities. And again, it's what he makes the most of them. And, but he brings not just the hitting side of it, but he brings the ability to play third base, second base, shortstop, and first base, and play at a pretty high level defensively. So whether he's hitting or not, that piece of the equation in terms of him being able to play all four positions is huge.
Before we close out, Coach, one more question for you. So a big thing in my own work is just professional development, right?
Yep.
You're focusing on educating yourself. What is something that you do personally to kind of develop your knowledge, improve your calling of the game, leadership skills? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways. To be honest with you, I go on YouTube a lot and listen to coaches that I like. I probably, they always say, leaders are readers. I need to read more.
Yeah.
I need to challenge myself in that area. But I do a lot of researching and watching coaches that I really admire and respect. Because now you can go on YouTube and get behind the scenes on pretty much everything.
Right.
You can go watch, the 30 for 30 or a Nick Saban deal or a Nick Saban podcast or, I just really like listening to people that I respect and think they do it, they do it really well. And I try to just, okay, now how can I go find that in terms of all the different ways that you can do that podcast and YouTube and different things to be able to watch and also listen and see, because I'm probably more of a visual learner as opposed to kind of just a reader. I like to see and kind of do those type of things. So that's where that, podcast, social media, and then also YouTube stuff in terms of really trying to figure out, okay, on the leadership style of different guys.
How has listening to Postgame Beers helped develop your leadership qualities?
Tremendously. I mean, there's a lot of times where I'm searching and we're searching in this office, and I'm like, what do you think the Lupton Drinking Club thinks?
Yeah, we're the tiebreaker.
Yeah, we'll go on a podcast and see, okay, well, what's the deal? Who do we need to play more and all that? Yeah, you guys definitely, in terms of professional advancement, you can't see it, but I got an 80-inch big screen TV over there, and I can't tell you how many times we've had the Lupton Drinking Club podcast up there during.
Oh, no.
Can we clip this, please?
Yeah, right.
Hey, in all seriousness, though, what do you need from us, Coach? We'll be there for most of the games, but what do you need from the Lupton Drinking Club and all the people that support you guys?
Well, I think the great thing is what you guys do every single year in terms of the support. It's hard to support a team sometimes when they're not playing very good, and you guys, through thick and thin, have been there, and the fun part is that you guys care, and so. And you've gotten yourself a nice little following. I think Kendall Rogers might tweet at you guys more than anybody in the country. So I think you guys are on the right track and do a really good job of not only promoting TCU baseball, but TCU athletics, man. I think it's awesome what you guys are doing and the passion that you have, and it means a lot, I know, to our program here at TCU. So I appreciate it. Just keep showing up and keep enjoying it, and keep having different 9-for-9 challenges.
Appreciate the kind words, Coach.
Thank you so much for your time. We're really excited for Friday.
You bet. So are we. Go Frogs. Thanks, guys.
Frogs.